grand existence, citizens of the cosmos. I'm J.D. Nicholas Jensen Denton, and this is my pharmacopoeia. I feel compelled as a plant medicine man, as a man who makes plant medicine. I feel compelled as somebody who has lost friends to plant medicine, and I feel compelled as a student, kind of an older student. I feel like an elder student, to be honest. I'm in college. Presently, I'm 28 years old. Take that however you will. But as a student in a new area of study in the United States, in the civilized, quote unquote, first world, I find a monumentous task that lies on the shoulders of what most people consider modern day scientists. And that task is to re-educate ourselves on indigenous local knowledge of nature, of indigenous peoples, on local knowledge that is derived from the tradition of the local language. And this is important because these people who have lived on the land in harmony for however God knows long have developed an awareness and a knowledge base of novel plant medicines. Not only that, they have a thorough application of shamanic and medicinal psychotherapeutic plants on their people. They have a connection with nature that enlightens them to the quote unquote true application of plant medicines. A holistic and, how can I best describe it? I'm at a loss for words. Maybe I shouldn't keep seeking. So it's this knowledge which has separated us from becoming a truly advanced and evolved species. This is the missing key, a keystone element, which is, I believe, truly leading to our destruction. And I see one aspect of this in my present education as I'm in school in a program that's designed for commercialization of cannabis production. Now, if you ask me, cannabis should never have had even been criminalized, and then it went through decriminalization, and now it's going through legalization, which entails regulation by the state on behalf of the authority of whoever is the authoritative agency on the regulation of these sorts of plants. As we'll see soon, it's the DEA, the FDA, federal governments. These bodies, if you ask me what I think these people are playing at, this state is playing at, is trying to dance around the word they. But there are bodies of knowledge out there which hold authority, such as what we're speaking over the masses, the ability to criminalize nature, to legalize nature, to regulate nature, who have the knowledge of the indigenous people. Actually, a lot of these bodies come from a long line of oppressive, tyrannical forces who have spent a fair amount of their existence into oppressing and sequestering this indigenous natural knowledge, and then on the flip side, putting the indigenous people in a state of diaspora, meaning pillaging, raping, stealing their land, oppressing their rights, and continually taking away at the freedoms that the sovereign human had over the land in exchange for not just freedom and sovereignty. Took their knowledge and it was replaced. It was exchanged for domination, subjugation, and control over nature, beginning with nature, ending with people. And so there is a myth in our society, even though we can on one hand be so painfully aware of our past sins and transgressions, to take a word from the man of whom I'm about to read. There is no shadow of doubt in our history, but the myth today is that somehow it's better than it is back then. Where the fact of the matter is, now the tyranny and the oppression and the slavery on behalf of the state over the masses is simply reached a point to where it is out of the realm of perception of the average individual. And the truth in that is the fact that there are more slaves alive today than there ever has been in history. And we have to ask ourselves, why is this happening? It's happening because of our understanding of nature, which we are ourselves, and because of our understanding of the actual external nature that has been usurped from us. And so when I see something like a federal government choosing to quote unquote legalize or decriminalize what is actually happening is intense regulation that is entirely unnecessary. I'm on the deregulate cannabis movement, if anybody was wondering. But what is happening is that a governing force which has advanced knowledge over the human nature is stepwise and very meticulously introducing psychoactive, psychedelic components into mass society at large. Okay, it wasn't just like all of a sudden one day they cut the tape and you could go buy cannabis at stores. The legal beast is unfolding its wicked, manipulative reality upon the masses, and we are truly getting what I believe the what could be a great teaching from nature, from plant medicine, into a very, very not even watered down, but worse, into a reduced, inverted, interpolated form, a completely backwards form, a materialist version of it. And materialism is the inverse of everything that is spiritual. Materialism, commodification, industrialization of a plant medicine, I think regulation of it by a third-party intercessory force is a direct infringement upon fundamental human rights. This is what drives me in my business, in my practice. I'm not allowed to use certain words. Here we go again. In my craft of learning how to make and use plant medicine. And so with that all in mind, I really wanted to read the opening chapter the introduction of this book by Alexander Shulgin, one of modern society's most famous revolutionary chemists, and I would call him a forward thinker. I would call him a pioneer. I would go so far as to say that him and his wife and his group of individuals, including the man who wrote the foreword to this book, David Nichols, to be some of the most important medicine researchers in known history. They've done more for the species than Isaac Newton could ever have done, which I believe says quite a bit, considering, relativity and technological revolution and calculus. And what we are witnessing currently is an unfolding of a global enlightenment, which I think is happening on a scale that actually is going to take a little bit longer than we're expected, than we would hope so. And that the process is going to be a lot like giving birth. Labor pains, it's going to hurt. Everybody's going to be freaking out. There's a bunch of madness everywhere. But it's all for a good reason, and in the end, we're going to see the fruits of our labor. However, we really are at an infantile stage right now in terms of our societal relationship to these plant medicines. And so I just wanted to read the introduction because Shulgin, Alexander Shulgin, says it a lot better. And I think everybody should hear this, because we live in a culture of dysbiosis. We live in a society of sickness. And I truly believe that, any mental sickness is precisely what Culpeper said, Nicholas Culpeper, that we could say that most of today's illness is illness of conscience, and the only thing that can remedy illness of conscience is direct God contact. This is the type of knowledge that was stolen from mankind, and this is the type of knowledge we need to bring back. So without further ado, the introduction to A Chemical Love Story, P-Cal, by Alexander Shulgin, and how we are supposed to properly use these plant medicines, these psychedelics, these natural teachers that occur ubiquitously in nature. So here we go. Let me try to make clear some of the reasons that I find the psychedelic experience a personal treasure. I am completely convinced that there is a wealth of information built into us, with miles of intuitive knowledge tucked away into the genetic material of every one of our cells, something akin to a library containing uncountable reference volumes, but without an obvious route of entry. And without some means of access, there is no way to even begin to guess at the extent and quality of what is there. The psychedelic drugs allow exploration of this interior world and insights into its nature. Our generation is the first ever to have made the search for self-awareness a crime. If it is done with the use of plants or chemical compounds as the means of opening the psychic doors. But the urge to become aware is always present, and it increases in intensity as one grows older. Rest in peace, Alexander Shulgin, who died on June 2nd, 2000, late 2000s, maybe 2009, 2014. Also, his wife, Anne Shulgin, who just wrote this book, died very recently. Another pioneer. I continue. One day, looking into the face of a newborn grandchild, you find yourself thinking that our birth has made a seamless tapestry of time as it flows from yesterday to tomorrow. You realize that life continuously appears in different forms and in different identities, but that whatever it is that gives shape to each new expression does not change at all. From where did her unique soul come from, you wonder? Into where will my own unique soul go? Is there really something else out there after death? Is there a purpose to it all? Is there an overriding order and structure that makes sense of everything? Or would, if only I could see it? You feel the urge to ask, to probe, to use what little time might be left to you, to search for ways to tie together all the loose ends, to understand what demands to be understood. This is the search that has been part of human life from the very first moments of consciousness, the knowledge of our own mortality, knowledge which places man apart from his fellow animals, is what gives man the right, the license to explore his own soul and spirit, to discover what he can about the components of the human psyche. I'm going to reiterate that. It is the search that has been part of human life since the very first moments of consciousness. This knowledge of our own mortality. We know we are all going to die. That alone separates us from the animals. Our ability to orchestrate ourselves around that fact separates us. That knowledge gives us the right, the license to explore the nature of our own soul and spirit, and to discover what we can about the components of the human psyche. Each of us at some time in his life will feel himself a stranger in the strange land of his own existence, needing answers to questions which has given rise from deep within his soul and will not go away. Shout out to my truth seekers. But the question and their answers have the same source, oneself. This source, this part of ourselves, has been called by many names throughout human history, the most recent being the unconscious. Freudians distrust it, and Jungians are enraptured by it. It is the part inside you that keeps watch when your conscious mind has drifted, that gives you the sense of what to do in a crisis, when there is no time available for logical reasoning and decision-making. It is the place wherein are to be found demons and angels and everything in between. This is one of the reasons I hold the psychedelic drugs to be treasures. They can provide access to the parts of us which have answers. They can, but again, they need not and probably will not, unless that is the purpose for which they are being used. It is up to you to use these tools well and in the right way. A psychedelic drug might be compared to television. It can be very revealing and instructive, and with thoughtful care in the selection of channels, the means by which extraordinary insights can be achieved. But to many people, psychedelic drugs are simply another form of entertainment. Nothing profound is looked for. Thus, usually, nothing profound is experienced. The potential of psychedelic drugs to provide access to the interior universe is, I believe, their most valuable property. From the earliest days of his time on Earth, man has sought out and used specific plants which have had the effect of altering the way he interacts with his world and communicates with his gods and with himself. For many thousands of years, in every known culture, there has been some percentage of the population, usually shamans, the curanderos, the medicine men, which has used this or that plant to achieve a transformation in its state of consciousness. These people have used the altered state to sharpen their diagnostic abilities and to enable them to draw upon the healing energies to be found in the world of spirits. The tribal leader in later civilizations, the royal families, presumably used the psychoactive plants to increase their insight and wisdom as rulers, or perhaps simply to call upon the forces of destructive power as allies in forthcoming battles. Many plants have been found to meet specific human needs. Unwanted pain has been with mankind forever. Just as we today have our heroin or fentanyl users, for centuries past, this analgesic role has been played by the opium of the old world, and datura of the new world, mandragora in Europe and North Africa, as well as henbane, belladonna, and mandrake, to name a few. We have in our own society learned to deaden physical pain and debilitating anxiety with the medical use of drugs which have been developed in imitation of the alkaloids in these plants. The need to search out sources of additional energy has also been with us forever. Regarding cocaine and caffeine users, these are just some of the needs that we have chosen to abuse the process. But then there is the need to explore the world that lies just beyond the immediate limits of our senses and our understanding. That too has been with mankind from the first. But in this case, our non-Native American society has not given its acceptance to the plants, the chemicals that open up your seeing and feeling skills. Other civilizations, for many hundreds of years, have used the peyote cactus and other psilocybin-containing mushrooms, the ayahuasca, the cahoba, the yaje of the New World, the harmala, cannabis, soma of the Old World, iboga of Africa, for this reason of inquiry into the human consciousness. But our modern medical profession as a whole has never acknowledged these tools for insight or for therapy. And they have remained generally unacceptable in the establishment of a balance of power between those who heal us and those who govern us. It has been agreed that the possession and use of these remarkable plants shall be a crime, and that the use of any chemical compounds which have been developed in imitation of these plants, even though they might show improved safety and consistency of an action, shall also be a crime. We are a great nation with one of the highest standards of living ever known. We are proud of an extraordinary constitution that protects us from the tyranny that has torn apart lesser nations. We are rich in the heritage of English law that assumes our innocence and assures us our personal privacy. One of the major strengths of our country has been in its traditional respect for the individual. each and every one of us is free, or so we have always been led to believe, to follow whatever religious or spiritual path he chooses, free to inquire, to explore, to seek information and pursue truth wherever and however he wishes, as long as he accepts full responsibility for his actions and their effects on others. How is it then that the leaders of our society have seen fit to try to eliminate this one very important means of learning and self-discovery, this means which has been used, respected, and honored for thousands of years in every human culture of which we have a record? Why has peyote, for instance, which has served for centuries as a means by which a person may open his soul to an experience of God, been classified by our government as a Schedule I material along with heroin and PCP? Is this kind of legal condemnation the result of ignorance, pressure from organized religion, or a growing urge to force conformity upon the population? Part of the answer may lie in an increasing trend in our culture towards both paternalism and provincialism. Paternalism is the name for a system in which the authorities supply our needs, and in exchange are allowed to dictate our conduct, both public and private. Provincialism is a narrowness of outlook, social unification by the acceptance of a single code of ethics, the limiting of interests and forms of experience to those already established as traditional. However, the prejudice against the use of consciousness-opening plants and drugs has the major part of its origin in racial intolerance, and the accumulation of political power. Peyote was described in various publications of the late 19th century as the cause of murder, mayhem, and insanity among the shiftless American Indians. It was only with tremendous effort and courage on part of many people of conscience that used the peyote as a sacrament in the Native American church, that use of the peyote as a sacrament in the Native American church was permitted to continue. There is now underway, as I'm sure you're aware, a renewed effort on part of our present government to eliminate the religious use of peyote by our Native Americans. That being said, we are seeing excellent, I don't want to call them wins, but we've been seeing great victories in the legal battle regarding psychedelics and the criminalization of newly discovered plants and compounds. That being said, it has only been through civilian activism that these victories have been achieved. Victories on behalf of making sovereign nature and sovereign humans come through the individual, not from the paternalism, not from the nanny state, not from the provincial materialist capitalist whose vile maxim is vile, which bears no repeating. Go read Wealth of Nations if you wish to know the motivation of the ruling class. I digress. We in this country are all too painfully aware of our past sins in regard to the rights of various minorities, but we are less conscious of the way in which the public attitude towards certain drugs has been manipulated. New positions of political power and eventually thousands of new jobs were created on the basis of the perceived threat to public health and new safety public health and safety posed by plants and drugs whose sole function was to change perceptions, to open the way to exploration of the unconscious mind, and for many to allow a direct experience of the numinous. The 1960s, of course, delivered a powerful blow to the psychedelics. These drugs were being used as part and parcel of a massive rebellion against governmental authority in what was believed to be an immoral and unnecessary war in Vietnam. Also, there were too many loud and authoritative voices claiming that there was a need for a new kind of spirituality and urging the use of psychedelics to make direct contact with one's God without the intervention of a priest, minister, or rabbi. The voices of psychiatrists, writers, and philosophers, and many thoughtful members of clergy pleaded for study and investigation of the effects of psychedelics and of what they could reveal about the nature and function of the human mind and psyche. They were ignored in the clamor against flagrant abuse and misuse, of which there was more than ample evidence. The government and the church decided that psychedelic drugs were dangerous to society, and with the help of the press, it was made clear that this was the way to social chaos and spiritual disaster. What was unstated, of course, was the oldest rule of all. Thou shalt not oppose nor embarrass those in power without being punished. I have stated some of my reasons for holding the view that psychedelic drugs are treasures. There are others, and many of them are spun into the texture of this story. There is, for instance, the effect they have on my perception of colors, which is completely remarkable. Also, there is the deepening of my emotional rapport with another person, which can become an exquisitely beautiful experience with eroticism of sublime intensity. I enjoy the enhancement of the senses of touch, smell, and taste, and the fascinating changes in my perception of the flow of time. I deem myself blessed in that I have experienced, however briefly, the existence of God. I have felt a sacred oneness with creation and its creator, and most precious of all, I have touched the core of my own soul. It is for these reasons that I have dedicated my life to this area of inquiry. Someday I may understand how these simple catalysts do what they do. In the meantime, I am forever in their debt, and I will forever be their champion. That was the introduction, or fragments of it, from Alexander Shulgins' Peak Hala Chemical Love Story, which stands for phenylethylamines, I do believe. Phenylethylamines, excuse me. Phenylethylamines I have come to know and love. Excellent story. It's as much about chemistry as it is about love, as it is about God, as it is about consciousness expansion. And I implore you to read it. And I truly believe that the more people that use shamanistic, psychedelic medicines, the more peaceful and advanced our society will become, without a shadow of a doubt. I'm going to close with 4 ohms. Thank you very much for joining me here. Oh, my seat. Thank you, citizens of the universe. I should have did that at the beginning of the thing, because it really is a necessary element of the production. Thank you very much. Have a grand existence.